So I gave an alternative version of the analogy you gave about a man meets woman Y and Z. Both are equally attractive, pleasant, close in age. Woman Y has slept with 20 plus men and is in and out of relationships frequently. Woman Z has slept with 4 men. 3 of them were serious long-term relationships. Well, who's going to be a better option for marriage? Most guys are going to say guy Z. And as someone said above, and this has been proven scientifically, the more guys a woman sleeps with, she loses the ability to pair bond. Now, there's a hormone called oxytocin, which is released during sex and also breastfeeding for women. And it's been shown that for every guy she sleeps with, the effect weakens each time. That's why when she first has sex, she gets really attached to the guy. And then as she has sex more and more, she doesn't feel anything. And there was a study, Pearl mentions this a lot as well. It shows that if a woman is a virgin on her wedding night, there's an 80% chance she'll be happy 10 years into the marriage. If she has 5 or more partners, it drops down to 20% and on and on. And in line with this, there's also a chart showing that the rate of the use of birth control a lot going with divorce, and they practically run hand in hand. And I don't think this is coincidence, because it's like, again, 5 or more, it drops to 20, and it's like, based on what I've observed, who I've talked to these days, you're lucky to find a woman who's had just 5 guys. Usually it's several more than that, especially by the time she's my age. So, it's not surprising that the divorce rate is so high, because one, you lose the ability to pair bond, but also the other thing is that they've often pointed out is that with the older generation, it was understood that, okay, you marry the person and you try to work things out with them. And, it doesn't mean things always went well. I mean, there were people in bad relationships. I get that. But it was the idea that, okay, you save yourself for this person and you try and work things out. Whereas if you've been with all these guys, you're constantly comparing the other guys to the guys you had been with previously. Is this the best I can do? And then a lot of these women are never satisfied, because they keep wondering, hypergamy kicks in and they keep wondering, is this the best I can do? And then, at some point it gets tough, because they're in that position where they're getting older, they don't have as many options, but they were still with those, top tier guys, and they keep wondering, all right, do I keep chasing those top tier guys and try and get with them, or do I settle for a more average guy? But at the same time, I feel like I'm dating down, because it's a step down from where I was. And that's a very tough position to be in. Whereas if you sleep with one guy, get attached to him, and then it's okay, we'll try and work things out when things go badly, it's more likely to produce a successful marriage. And we talk about it in the other series, Marry Him, but they interviewed some of the women from older generations. They basically espouse what I was just saying, that it was understood, okay, you try and work things out with your husband. Again, it doesn't mean there aren't bad relationships. It doesn't mean people were trapped in bad relationships they couldn't get out of. I'm not saying that, but it was understood that, okay, you try and make things work with that person, not you constantly search for something perfect. Yeah. Thoughts and
Yeah,
comments before I read the next one? Yeah.
yeah. Just to reiterate again, we're not saying that having sex is 100% or is 100% the reason why people don't really have solid long-term relationships. And yes, there are actual biological aspects of it. There's also like learned behavior. You go to the gym for a certain amount of time, your body gets used to going to the gym. You start learning some habits like, oh, if I'm upset, I go to the gym. That's the kind of thing that's kind of learned behavior. So if you keep doing something, you're going to reinforce it in your mind. Your mind's going to create things like, this is the way I behave. When I get this level of stress, or when I feel X, I do Z and I get Y reward. So that's going to be kind of targeted in there. So somebody might think, if I'm having these kind of sexual relations with this person, once I'm at this level of discomfort with it, or once I've done this enough things, I seek this other thing and I've been rewarded for doing that, because that's just the way your mind works. So if somebody has already started building that kind of mentality when they're in a relationship with their partner, they might reach those same figures before that told them, okay, now it's going to find a different person, and that's still in there. So there's a higher chance, since they've had the history of successfully leaving somebody that they were with and finding somebody that they thought was better, and then leaving that person again, finding someone they thought was better, leaving someone again, finding someone they thought was better. That's already been built up. They had the lived experience of doing that. So there's a higher chance, if they're in a relationship and they think, oh, there's somebody who I could probably get better, they might actually leave. Whereas if somebody hasn't had that history, and their pretty much only relationship history was just this one person that they thought was good, and they made this dedication to it, and they decided to actually stick it through with this person, they don't really have the past history of finding people better, finding people better, finding people better. So they might be things that they'll be able to pass through. And I think most relationships have shown, like most people who've had some disagreement in the relationship that actually went and sought marriage counseling, or actually went and talked it out, end up
Yeah.
being together versus breaking up after those. So there's some situations where the people just don't really. There's some things that maybe they just discuss it and they'll figure it out. Because I think if you look at the statistics and you can say maybe, if somebody gets a career before moving, before leaving the location that they're actually in. Like this is the town, like they went to college in this place, they graduated, and they get a career in that one location. There's probably a higher chance that person will be at that job in 10 years than somebody who gets a career after having traveled or moved around to different cities and worked different places. That person who gets that job at that same time, probably in 10 years, they might be at 2 or 3 different jobs because that person has also had the experience of traveling to different cities and seeing, okay, yes, I didn't like this city, I didn't like this job, I went to this other place, that was better. I didn't like the city, I didn't like this job, I went to this other place and that was better. Whereas that person who's like, this is the only job that I had, this is the only city that I had, that's all they know. And then their mind also reinforces their dedication of being in there. They're already committed to it. So that's the thing. So we're not saying it's the job, it's the multiple jobs that make this person not steady in that one job. It's rather there's something about that person's mentality that makes them more likely to choose a different job. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
That's a good analogy. And then my other point here was it's like, are there women who have many sexual partners that go on to have happy, stable relationships? You know, I'm not ruling it out, but it doesn't seem to be the norm. And I made the comparison. It's like we all have that relative who can eat terribly their whole life, smoke, drink, and live to be 80 plus. Like I had a friend, he said his great aunt ate cheeseburgers and smoked like a pack or more of cigarettes a day, lived to be 80 something. You know, my great grandmother was puffing away even as an older lady, had breast cancer, beat it. She lived to be almost 100. Like, you know, we all have relatives like that, but it's like those are the exceptions, not the rules. And it's like that doesn't mean go out, you know, live that lifestyle and hope, oh yeah, I'm going to be like my relative who lives old. It's like you may, but it's like, do you really want to gamble on that? I mean, we know that's generally unhealthy because it's like that was the argument I had with my friend where I told her some of this stuff and she was like, oh, that's one-sided. But I'm like, is there any long-term benefit to women sleeping with a ton of guys? I mean, I haven't heard it. I've heard a lot of evidence in the opposite direction. Like, yeah, when I was drinking more, yeah, I was feeling good in the moment, but it's like we all know long term that's not good. It's like, yeah, you're having fun, live and let live, but it's like that doesn't alleviate you from the consequences of these decisions either. And I think it's like a lot of people, including some in this thread, giving how they reacted, they seem to struggle with this.
And this is the thing, yes, we're focusing because it was a woman that held the sign, and we're talking about in that SMV sense. But I haven't looked at the stats, but I would be 100% sure to find that men who've had over 20 partners are also likely to cheat on their spouse more than men who are virgins when they got married. That's something I'm probably 100% sure. Like I'm like 99.9% sure you'd find those statistics. Yeah. If a man has had over 20 partners, they're probably 10 times more likely to cheat on their wife than a man who was a virgin when he got married. So this is not just, we're both human beings. Yes, everything that's good for the goose is not good for the gander because we're not all geese, but we are all humans. So some of the things there's also no real benefit for a man to have 100 partners. To have there's no real benefit to it. I'm not saying it's inherently negative, but what are you getting out of that? You're probably not getting that unless you're like a professional, you're like a porn star, you're a sex worker or something. You can say, okay, there's some financial aspect of it. But otherwise, there's no real big point. You can do 500 different positions with one person versus do one different position with 500 people. I don't really see the different value of having those 500 positions with 500 people versus 500 positions with one person. That's in my mindset. This is not necessarily the mindset I had when I was in my 20s, but I was dumber and stupider in my 20s than I am now.
Well, and also, too, you know, they try to make the argument against me like, oh, don't you believe in freedom? Yeah, I believe you have a right to sleep around. I'm saying it doesn't end well. Like, I had a right to drink as much as I did. It doesn't mean I should have. You know, it's the same thing. It's like we're saying people have the right to, sure, but that doesn't mean freedom from the consequences of these decisions. And it's like maybe it's hard for them to accept that these decisions have consequences, again, avoiding responsibility. But it's like, again, if someone can show me there's a benefit to women and having a ton of partners, I'm willing to see it. But as of yet, I just see the opposite. So,
yeah. Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Presents. 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 Presents.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.